Welcome back to Ellys Manor House, the Merchant's Way. Now, we have so much of this it will become so in-depth, but we're easing you into this. And it is such a vast piece. Now, for me, I think we're gathering a pace which there are too many cultural places. We're seeing all of what's calling themselves the treasure houses. We're seeing, obviously, the historic houses. And we're now seeing the emergence of what I call cultural theme parks. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all they are. Now, that's not to decry any of this. They all serve a purpose. They'll all have an audience. But I think we just have to be a bit more select, knowing what we want. Like we get a certain amount of history group, people who are seriously into history. And what's very flattering for us as a small house, we've got groups we've been open for, this is our 10th year. And we've had groups who've been here 5 times. Over a period of time, obviously. And they come back as a larger group. That's because they've found it so captivating. And that's good to see that there are people who obviously they're hooked in and this is what they want. Now, if you emptied this building of all of its contents, absolutely nothing. It's furnished in a very eclectic way because it's a home. We're not a museum, we're not a gallery, and nor are we a culture theme park. Because that's what a lot of these places, they're becoming enormous. They're theme parks. We're not that. Even our vocabulary changes. When you come to a place like this, if you were then to convey to someone else what you thought of the place, and if you were asked to do so, you would find at the end of that, and then you went to another place. At the end of that, your descriptions from both those or all of those different places would change, your vocabulary would change. Because this has grown organically. You would be using words like magical, organic, because that's what it does. You cannot just expect to build, yes, you can spend an awful lot of money and you can build fantastic buildings. And you can get the finest piece of art, what you consider or someone else consider to be the finest piece of art, and you can put it in those buildings. And if that's what you want, then great. But I promise, if I, for instance, and I'm using this as an example because I also think it's a fabulous painting. You could study this piece of painting for the rest of your life and you still wouldn't be certain that you've actually interpreted it correctly. And that's Arne Feeney, Jan van Eyck. Jan van Eyck wasn't just the Northern Renaissance master. He was the master. For the likes of Jan van Eyck, Albrecht Dürer, Jan Memling, Roger van der Weyden, they're all at court in Italy. And so the Italians were aware of these skillful painters. It was the northern painters that developed oil painting. The Italians were still working in tempera. And so we're seeing, all of this coming out of the north. And we tend to forget about, when we hear the term Renaissance, we think solely of Northern Italy, forgetting Northern Europe. And I remember about 10 years ago when we first started opening the house to the general public and schools and so forth, I would talk to some very well accomplished artists and people who were in the arts, and they'd look at me when I mentioned the term Northern Renaissance. They'd say, what is he talking about? Today, it's becoming more known because there's been many programs now I've seen myself on television and so forth. So we are getting people's attention about the Northern Renaissance. And some of those painters I mentioned, I mean, pieces, Hieronymus Bosch, if you look at his work, we're seeing the social aspect of what it does. The difference between the Italian Renaissance and the Northern Renaissance, in the North, there was a gritty feel. There was a thing of perfectionists. They wanted you to feel and see the images as if there were life, they were breathing. And yes, when you look at Jan van Eyck's work, it's very difficult not to be able to. It's work you can go back to time and time again, because it's full of symbolism. And you know, for a very long time, some of the experts thought his wife was pregnant. They now seem to be of the opinion that no, she wasn't. It's the way the fold of the dress comes up. And this is what's lovely, because over time, and even here within the paintings, things have been done. And they were done so many years ago when they thought that was the thing to be done. And we see changes today. Those things which were done have become a no-no. And it's the same within all of these other disciplines of art and so forth. Things were being read in a way that they assumed that was the message that was being conveyed. And today, we're looking back at these and we're getting because we get different people coming into this. And also, and I don't mind telling you, my background is I did not come up through the tradition. I'm not an academic coming up through arts and so forth. As much as that can be a very positive thing, that can also be a disadvantage. My background comes through films and television. And you know, in films and television, we have something that I consider very special. And that is, we work more from what we call the backstory. We don't just see things and look at them. We think of what actually brought those two things together. We are more forensic, I think anyway, that's my opinion. We want that backstory. When you get a script, yes, you read the script when you write the script, but there's always a backstory. You know, you have your character, but it's not just the character is not a character until you create that backstory. And that is the thing, and I repeatedly will always remind you of this interconnectedness. Absolutely everything we do is connected. You can see the examples in other disciplines. So we're always going to have to come back to whatever it is we've spoken about and address it, because it has to be introduced. And so for that, it's done in a way, and I'm really struggling not to use the term bite size, but You know, one has to, you cannot avoid it. But as you become more familiar with the subject we're talking about, we can get that much deeper, because I need for you to stay on board. Pardon the pun. We need to keep you on board as not to lose you, so that when we really start to delve into the depth of all of this, you've already been introduced in a way to be able to stay with us. So thanks again for being on our voyage, and we look forward to welcoming you. Goodbye.